I'm here to talk about baby steps to the next gen SOC. Now, I know some of you saying, why are we talking about the SOC? The SOC is dead. But I'm going to really kind of try and shift your view on that and say the SOC is not dead, but it really is evolving. It's changing through really the environment that we are forced to participate in, we're forced to monitor, we're forced to protect. And what does that mean? Well, if you think about the history, and I understand the history of security may actually, I've been in this for a while, so it may actually predate some of you, but that's all right. We're talking about going way back when our environment was relatively simple, at least compared to what it is now. We had a basic castle and moat architecture where we had that hard, crunchy outside. All of our protections were on the perimeter, and everything on the inside was that soft and chewy, and I can go anywhere, do anything. We had relatively few security tools. We were, as far as the attacks, by today's standards, they're relatively simple, but back then they were fairly effective. And so as we moved through time, you see we moved from on-prem, we started having some remote abilities. Cloud started to come into account, started to really be built. We had more tools, and we moved into more of a defense in depth architecture. We had layers of security. It wasn't just the perimeter, but then we had the DMZ. We had some protections around some of our data, some of our more valuable applications. We may have started segmenting our networks at a high level. So then even and that enabled better protection, better monitoring. But then as our technologies advanced, as our capabilities and skills advanced, and our understanding of what we needed as attacks matured and became better, we are moving again to the next model of defense, the next defensive architecture kind of capability process, if you will, and that's sort of a zero trust. Whatever that looks like in your environment, that's where networks, that's where enterprises, that's where the architecture is really moving to. And we have more tools that we are now able to use to defend our networks, to monitor our networks. And we have additional elements that we have to protect and defend: mobile, OT, as all of those capabilities get pulled under the umbrella of the things that are critical to our networks, critical to our operations. That is, all of those things are really important that tie into that. So what is the challenge? The challenge is that our SOC, if we have, whatever SOCs we have, they are still stuck in the structure of the last decade, of the last 15 years, where we have a sort of a centralized hub. It could be a SIM, but a centralized place where the logs are coming in, where our monitoring tools and our alerts are going from a number of different sources. We have this setup where we have tiers of analysts that are doing sort of a pass the buck, not in terms of yes, in terms of responsibility, but not in the sense of an irresponsible that responsibility, but in the sense of, hey, I did my part, now your turn, now your turn, your turn, of what is going on and taking things, So this is where many of our SOCs are still today. Now, there are some SOCs that have really changed with the times, and that's great. We'll talk about that a little bit. But by and large, this is how we think of a SOC. Well, the challenges that come with the change in our environment are not, we are not able to really meet with this SOC. So what does that look like? What are some of those challenges? Well, there's a lack of personnel. All right, I don't have to tell you that. That was easy. That's low-hanging fruit. But we are really, one of the things that you may have really conceptualized is that increasingly complex security stack has really pushed the limits of what that SOC in this structure is able to monitor, respond, and analyze. And so that's really pushing the boundaries of the capabilities of that structure. Additionally, we have a limited visibility into an increasing attack surface. We just aren't able to monitor and watch every location we need to monitor and watch, and it continues to grow and become, expand as to the different locations that can be attacked. We can't, that SOC structure with the tools and the personnel really cannot operate at scale to handle better attacks and higher volumes. So that is another challenge that structure is facing. And we still have this age-old dilemma, this age-old conflict, this age-old push and pull where we're trying to balance compliance with best practices, with effective security and operations, not to mention business and all the other factors that go into being effective for the organization. And attackers have shifted their primary targets. Back when I first started this, their primary targets, attackers were looking to get access to servers. They were looking to get access to devices, because owning a device, owning the domain controller, while still a valuable target today, right? That's still the keys to the kingdom. But it was also web servers. Oh, I own the web server, or I own the database server, or the firewall. Those were valuable targets. But today, if I can't get access to the domain controller, but I can get access to all your identities, then that's fine. I don't have to own the server itself. Or I get access to your data. Well, that's great. Those are the valuable things that are far more targeted than just a physical device. So how did we get to this spot? How did we get to where we are now? Several things. First, the first things that really stand out in my mind are the fact that operations shifted to a cloud and a DevOps capability. When SOCs were first coming around and security was really becoming an actual kind of consideration in development and in operations, security often became the roadblock. And that was good and bad. It was bad because it slowed things down. It was good because security was able to really say, hey, we should make sure that this application has security built in, and there are considerations, and fix this cross-site scripting area or injection attack path. And so that was great, but it slowed production down, it slowed operations down, it slowed development down. And when operations and DevOps came about, they needed to move fast. You're putting out 2, 3, you guys know this, I'm not telling you anything you aren't aware of. When they have to put out 4 or 5 different versions a day, you can't have security sitting there going, nope, I need a day of testing, or I need a week of testing to verify that that version meets the security. It doesn't work like that, not in a manual process anyway, because a lot of that DevOps, as you know, is automated. Security was way behind getting into that automation. And additionally, the move to remote, anywhere, anytime access, suddenly we as security no longer had control over either devices that were being used to access, or the environment within the access was being provided. We couldn't control the coffee shops and the libraries and the hotels, much less, bring, devices that were involved with BOIOD. And so those shifts really made security challenging, because we no longer were, able to put our hands in all the environments we wanted to. Hey, some good news, security did get better, but you know what? So did our attackers. And so that necessitated a different approach to many things. And as such, tools and methodologies have increased in number and thus complexity, as we built more tools to handle better attackers and more complex environments. But that also meant the amount of tools that we're monitoring and using have also increased, right? You think about, back, 10, 15 years ago, how many tools did we have on the network? We had like a firewall, an IDS, an antivirus, but right, we had maybe half or fewer or a quarter of the tools that we have now. And I think one of the big challenges that we are trying to adapt as a mindset is that we are no longer operating in the assumption that we are that a network can be unhackable. We are now in the assumed compromise, and that mindset, one of several mindsets that are out there, is really important to understand the difference in what we're doing. So what's the solution? Hey, spoiler alert, it's in my title, and we need to become next gen. But what does that mean? It's a buzzword. So let's put some handles on that buzzword. Let's put some something that we can really carry around. So one big thing is that when you're next gen, you're shifting your strategy, and this isn't just a security view, it's a whole environment, a whole organizational change where you're moving from the defense in depth, or the expense in depth is the joke because it costs so much to do this. We're moving from that to zero trust. And you're building resilience in your networks. You're not only saying, hey, zero trust, which at its foundation is I don't trust anything. So any interaction from any user, any device, to any data, and to any application, every access, every interaction, I want authentication and authorization checked every time. That's zero trust. I no longer trust you if you just because you've authenticated once. You need to authenticate every time. And you're doing it with resilience built into your network. That is, your environment should be able to operate even while under or during an attack, at least the essential or the critical components. So then you're able to, when you have that, the next part of being next gen is that routine things are just handled automatically. And that can include being where alerts and in events are automatically enriched and triaged. And those alerts and events and the automation is constantly being updated and tuned. You're not just putting out an alert. You're not just writing alert, putting it into production and going, oh, we're done. You are reevaluating maybe once or twice a week, just like DevOps is constantly putting out new versions and patches on a consistent basis. We're doing that in security with alerts and responses and automated responses, because just as the need for application need constant upgrades for minor, consistent minor improvements, so do our detections and responses need to do the same. Logs and events are ingested from a variety of places, but really one of the other things is we really start leaning into machine learning and AI to force multiply what we have. We're using that to help capture advanced threats and attackers and do things like, and I'll talk about this more, where we're using it to help our analysts in ways that are more than just querying ChatGPT. So how do we do that? Now, as I get into the next steps here, I want to make sure that I say, hey, look, this is not a one-size-fits-all, everybody has to do this. I tried to break these steps and these concepts into phases with certain steps in each phase, but I understand not everybody is going to be able to do all of these things, and some of you may already have some or many of these things done. The goal here is to provide a conceptual, progressive a flow so that you can say, oh, these are some things I should do or I could do to help move me to the next step. And not so much the order of which that I present them, but how they are appropriate to your environment to help you improve and advance and evolve your SOC. So the way I broke down this, in my view, phase one, where we want to, first of all, really increase automation and integration. Automation is that automation really is that thing that says, hey, let's take the routine things or the simple things and take them out of the analyst's hands and do that more and more and more and more. Integration is where you make sure your tools can talk and work with one another. The more your tools integrate with each other, the better your automation will be, and the better your bang for the buck will get from automation. So you want to start ingesting threat intelligence, and not just threat intel from external sources, but your own threat intel, because you know your environment, you know what's happened before. So feed that information back into your detections and your automation to help make it better. So start your migration or plan your migration from your on-prem SOC to a cloud-based tools. You're not going to be able to process and store the amount of logs and do the amount of compute on those logs with an on-prem unless you have an unlimited budget. And if you do, call me. I'd love to work for someone like that. You just don't have that money. You're going to have to expand into the cloud. And I understand cloud's not automatically cheaper, but having that flexibility, it is going to improve your ability to store more, compute more. You want to start doing an asset, a data, and an identity inventory management. Know what assets, what physical assets you still have, and start identifying what identities you have out there, both users and entities and services, as well as where your data is, because you need to shift your thinking from protecting devices to protecting data and identity. So phase two, where now we're starting to move into the cloud. So as you do that, start splitting your data out. What's your high value data going that is great for doing security alerts? And what is your other data, not low value, but other data where you're actually working on, you're able to use that and leverage that for machine learning and AI and deep analysis, for large data sets. So start splitting that out. The other data can go into cheaper storage, but your first data is going to in your log analysis. What you're really doing is you're preparing so that someday all of your data is going into the cheap storage, and your analytic and your compute is going to be separate. This is where you really can start migrating to a SOC-based to cloud-based SOC tools to handle that difference in compute, as well as where you start using your machine learning and AI on that large data set. Start using risk-based analysis or user-based analysis tools. And those tools have come a long way since when they were first introduced 10, 15 years ago. And they're really starting to mature in their ability to bring out anomalies that are valuable, and then that you can actually use to do alerting or at least investigations. Remember, an anomaly is not an alert. They're two different things, but an anomaly can drive the creation thereof. Your security becomes focused on identity and data, and start measuring your progress is what you also want to do. So your final phase, where you want to really end up, is you want to be completely in the cloud. You want to have that log storage separate from your compute and your analytics. Your compute and your analytics are doing all of your alerting, from your atomic alerting. If this happens, make me an alert, because I know this thing is bad. You want to do your machine learning, where it's doing those, hey, this is weird. It is weird enough that it should be investigated. Your AI, whatever that is in 5 years, right? I'm not thinking about AI today. I'm thinking about the advances we're going to make in 5, 10 years, right? That's the kind of AI where, what is it going to be that, and AI that's specifically created for security environments, where it's trained on security environments to say, hey, I'm processing this, and I know that in a security viewpoint, this is suspicious enough that you should do something. UBA and RBA as well. You want to change your structure from tiered to teams, right? You want to have teams where each team has all of the components of your SOC, your analyst, your IR, your threat hunter, your threat intelligence, and they're doing all the monitoring, and then you want to break it down. What this gives you the ability is to have seniors and juniors working together to all build each other up in a team. You get rid of that tier. You also have that. You get rid of that tiered structure, and you have now a growth path. When you bring on the entry level person, they don't see themselves hitting that tier 1 and being like, now what? I can't go anywhere. I have to go to another company. And so in that, you also are doing teams. You also have created a detection engineering DevOps environment where that's overall everything that's doing that constant building of alerting and tuning and such. You are organized, organizing a team. Partner with an MSSP or MDR to cover gaps where you don't have the ability to do either ticketing or tier 1 or triage or maybe threat intel. So that's not a problem. And you're part of that then is you're doing training from your juniors and up. initiate AI, as I mentioned before, AI can be absolutely useful to help prompt for options to do things. Hey, I want to go check, whether you're a junior and they're still learning, where you can say, hey, this event happened, here are 4 or 5 different actions you can take next from here, and that helps them learn, as opposed to maybe a senior uses AI to say, man, I have gone through everything I can think of. Maybe there's another path that I didn't think of. So you're using it for analysis and investigative assistance. So how do you get there? Most important thing on this slide is start with what you have. You don't have to just throw out the baby in the bathwater. To begin this process, start with what you have, figure out how to get better automation and better integration in with what you have. So simplify tools if possible. Do you have a tool that has 4 to 5 do you have tools that overlap in 3 or 4 areas? Maybe you don't need that tool. Maybe you've neglected part of one tool that could get rid of another tool. So simplify, help your analysts out. Develop and hire talent that does cloud, that does programming, does DevOps, has those skills, because those skills are going to be needed. So develop them in-house if which is great. But hire with that thought down the road as well. Begin your zero trust journey. This is coming. And you understand what zero trust is, but understand how it applies to your environment, not just sort of what someone else did or some vendor is telling you. What does that mean in your environment to constantly authenticate and authorize every transaction that is going on? So, in conclusion, no 2 SOCs will be the same, but all should have the same goals. So there's a lot of stuff in here. Not all of it applies to you. That's fine. I'm not here to, this isn't tailored specifically to a person. It's trying to give you all these thoughts so that you can say, oh, hey, these things really are good for me, and I should probably look at these other things to see other items and other tasks, right, to see if it applies. So you want to implement and continue automation efforts, at a slow, steady pace, right? This isn't like do all the automation now. That's like 1 a week or 1 a month. Whatever it is, it's continually improving and implementing. Consume tailored threat intel that applies to you or your vertical or your horizontal, whatever your environment is. Shift your operations to the cloud. Start protecting identity and data instead of devices. Start really developing a capability and an understanding and use cases for ML and AI down the road, right? It may not be today. Maybe AI doesn't have the ability to do what you want it to do. That's fine. It's probably coming in 3 to 5 to 10 years. Think about that. Plan for detection engineering, and use short and long-term planning to pursue zero trust and resilience. And with that, that is my baby steps to a next gen SOC. And here's my contact information in the slides. There are some references, including a white paper that I wrote a couple years ago on this.